Sup YouTube, JR Juggernaut 1 here, and welcome to the very first episode of Meta Mondays. Now, this first episode is going to be a little later than most episodes, but that's because I've been kind of spending the portion of the day preparing this up. So, I decided I don't want this episode to be too long though, so let's try and make it brief. For this episode, I'll be talking about two major topics regarding the meta. The first will be regarding the Nationals meta, something I wish I had been able to talk about last week, but I feel like it's important enough that I just at least talk about it now. So the Nationals meta, as I talked about in previous videos, I expected it to be a fair amount of plant decks with a mix-in of everything else. You know, insert random percentages here. Interestingly enough, I think that I'm pretty sure the percentage of plant decks or Tengu decks, I should say, was a little bit higher than what I expected, but I still saw a lot of decks going around. But I did end up playing more Tengu decks than I expected, as you might have heard in my previous videos. So, I don't know. However, what really surprised me about this meta, and I think people are starting to realize it too, Librarian to me doesn't seem like as big of a deal anymore. The whole problem with now seems to be all about Reborn Tengu. All of a sudden, I feel like I can live with Librarian being at 1, because I feel like there's things they could just do to it, like other things like you hit formula, you can hit a few other cards, I suppose, and the card just becomes less broken immediately. It kind of slightly balances it out. I still think it should get banned at the very end of the day, though, just because of its effect, but it does make you think, they could theoretically, like, there'd be legitimate reason behind putting it to 1 instead. Reborn Tengu, on the other hand, you can't do anything about it. There's nothing you can do to balance it out. I guess with the exception of putting Pot of Avarice to 1. But I don't feel like that justifies keeping it at 3. Even if you put Pot of Avarice to 1, the problem is Tengu's still stupid. Really stupid. Like, you could still use cards like Transmigration Prophecy to recycle it back into your deck. There's just ways to kind of abuse it, and I don't like that. I don't like that at all. But regardless, I think my major point is that it's like, kind of forget about Librarian. Tengu's the real problem. Konami has to do something about it. But I'll talk more about that in a ban list video. But I think that's just kind of what the sense of the meta that we've got. Tengu's the problem. It needs to be solved. Tech Genius was also a big part of it. And Tech Genius, in my opinion, was, I guess, a deck I never would have expected to do that well. But it makes sense when you think about it. Tech Genius is a deck that can very much control the pace of the game, while also making some somewhat explosive plays when it needs to. The reason I didn't expect this deck to do so well is because I expected that the deck that would win would be such an explosive deck. I was wrong, because the fact is, this is a control deck that moves quickly enough to keep up with the other decks. That was my reasoning, which was my reasoning behind an explosive deck winning. I didn't think any control decks could actually keep up or do anything about it. I was wrong. But that's alright, you know, we're allowed to be wrong about these things, and I think it's good in a way. So, regardless, I'm curious to see, though, how the ban list is going to shape up over the next month or so. I don't know. But the other quick thing I want to talk about is the XYZ monsters. I think that's how you pronounce it. Yeah, we're going to go with that. The starter deck, the 2011 starter deck was just released about a week ago, right before Nationals, or I guess a week or two, give or take. Obviously, the deck was very critical in a sense, because XYZ monsters are a new type of monster. But at the same time, the XYZ monsters they released, while they're all generic and they can all be used in their own way, they're nothing that good. You know, there's not much that really needs to be said about it. They're decent cards, but I don't know if they're going to make any type of big impact on the format, especially when you consider the decks being played right now. All the decks that make good use of this card, they're like, they're just not worth using, or they're not fast, they're not good enough, they don't get enough of a boost from these XYZ monsters in order to become top tier. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't see that being a false statement, even with Gen-Con coming around the corner. I guess I'll talk more about that next week, but honestly, there isn't that much to talk about in regards to it. I will explain my reasoning for it, but, I mean, again, I just don't think I'm not going to spend all that much time talking about it. It's just not a huge event. But yeah, the XYZ monsters are going to be big. I'm gonna talk more about those monsters in next week before the sneak. It's gonna be rather interesting. I'm curious to see what the rarities of some of these cards are gonna be, but we will see what happens. So I don't know how long this episode is right now, but hopefully it's just long enough for an episode. I hope you guys enjoyed. Next week I'll be talking about the sneak, and I'll be talking about what I consider to be the top 10 cards you should be looking for from the set. I haven't done that in a while actually, so definitely good I do it for this one, because last time I did it was 6 months ago, because I wasn't able to do it for Extreme Victory on account of finals. But that'll change, and trust me when I say I'm going to be looking forward to making this list, because while a lot of the cards in this set are pretty trashy, the big cards in it are really big, so that will be interesting. So peace out, guys.